With the NHL Draft and NHL Free Agency mostly wrapping up to this point, I wanted to go through the biggest winners and losers of the NHL offseason so far. Of course, there's still a few trades I think left to make and a couple of signings here and there, but a week into NHL Free Agency, most of the top free agents have signed, and we've already seen a ton of big trades throughout the league. But make sure you guys watch till the end as I go through all my thoughts on a bunch of the massive moves we saw, and make sure that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey ranking content all across this summer. Now let's start out today on the winners column and go through a team that I thought did well in the draft, did well in trades, and also did well in free agency. Let's go on to the Carolina Hurricanes. The jury is still out on whether the Canes can actually take that next step in the NHL playoffs this next year, but they made a lot of the right moves that I wanted to see them go after. Getting a definitive first-line wing was something that I think was a necessary move, and they went out and got it in Nikolaj Ehlers. If he is healthy, he's one of the more high-skilled, high-speed players in this league, and has the potential to be exactly what Carolina needs more of. Plus, even though he's more of a playmaker, he can pot in a few goals here and there. I think he's going to fit in wonderfully on that first line. I'd love to see him and Seth Jarvis specifically together as well. But at $8.5 million, it's hard to complain about a contract like that, again, if he is healthy long-term. Then you have the trades they made. The big one being, of course, K'Andre Miller. That was a big trade between the Rangers and the Canes. Even though I think in terms of the pure value, I like it from the Rangers' perspective, I think K'Andre Miller has a ton of potential to rebound in Carolina's system and actually play pretty well there, considering how solid of a shot he has, the physical traits, the skating. There's a lot of talent to build on there. It's just a matter of wrapping up that decision making, getting it a little bit faster and a little bit less clunky. And if you can do that, then K'Andre Miller is a very serviceable, if not great, middle pair D. Contract is a little bit iffy at $7.5 million, but if K'Andre Miller does live up to his potential, I think that's more than worth it. So for a Canes team that I wanted to see retool their defense a little bit, on top of Nikishin, of course, being a big rookie for next season, I think they will be doing that. And even the moves they didn't end up making, I thought were pretty strong ones. Letting go of Brent Burns, who at this point, I mean, he has his value, but I just think in the Canes system wasn't what he needed to be to stick around in a top 6 spot. He goes off to the Colorado Avalanche. And then you have the decisions they made in the draft. I thought some pretty strong ones. Not drafting in the first round, but still in a ton of quality or quantity, as they always do. But guys like Semyon Frolov, Charlie Serrato, Ivan Ryabkin, Kurban Limatov, even guys like Philip Ekberg in the 7th round, just good value all around, which is exactly what the Canes do in pretty much every single draft. After that, there wasn't any teams that I think did amazingly, but just a lot of very solid off seasons. Vegas is one, though, that made a big splash, of course, getting Mitch Marner in free agency, or I guess via a trade. Even though we did see Nick Waugh traded, which is quite a bit for a UFA to be dealt, Vegas wanted to secure Marner, and at the cap hit for what Marner is capable of, I can absolutely see why. They needed some more punch in that top 6, a great winger for a Jack Eichel, and they got him. And considering all the speculation about Marner and his playoff woes, I think Vegas is the perfect opportunity and the perfect team to get the best out of him in the playoffs. Of course, it will be a big test this next year, but I think Marner will end up rebounding in a strong way. Plus, they had the really interesting Nick Hague deal, which I think they came out on top. They got Colin Sissons, who's kind of just a replacement for a Nick Waugh, kind of in a similar range, though up and down in terms of the production. And then Jeremy Lauzon as kind of a bottom pair left shot, physical type of D. And the draft, although nothing special, I thought they did okay considering their pick selections. All in all, though, Mitch Marner is the big prize, but I think to get that type of player, when they did, it was exactly what Vegas needed to get a shot in the arm. Now, I only have a few losers on this list, mostly because we're so early into the offseason. Even in teams like the LA Kings that I'm about to mention could make other moves in the future, but so far, I'm just not a big fan of this Kings offseason at all. And hey, I get it for the Kings. It was a big problem this last playoff run versus Edmonton, the blown leads over and over. They certainly have a type, though, in this year's free agency, going after players like Gil Armia, Brian Dumoulin. These two guys, I think, are solid players. I mean, at their terms, it's a little bit iffy, but I think it's okay. But you just keep going, and it keeps getting stranger. Anton Forsberg, I guess, is fine in a backup role. Cody, Ceci is insane at 4 years, $4.5 million, though. Just an absolute albatross. Corey Perry's fine, I guess, at $2 million. It's okay. Though I think Perry is best when he has that kind of Connor McDavid-like to be able to play around, which doesn't really have much of a stake in LA's center situation. There's not really somebody like that to be able to play drive while Corey Perry can just stand around the net. I think in LA's case, it's kind of a misdirection because you have the players they lost in guys like Vladislav Gavrikov, Jordan Spence. I mean, Tanner Jeannot isn't that great, but mostly the 2D in Gavrikov and Spence, I think, are pretty rough losses. Spence, I get it, not the biggest guy in the world, and Gavrikov might have wanted to just go to the Rangers in the end, but I just look at the replacements, and I'm just not all that inspired by this Kings team. The depth, they added depth, but At what cost? It wasn't even that great a depth in the first place. Armia is fine, Duminil is fine, Perry is fine, but fine is, I think, the best you're going to get in this pool of players. And I gotta say, man, if you're signing Cody Ceci to try to stop the Edmonton Oilers, you must not have watched that Stars versus Oilers series literally a couple months ago, because there was no stopping happening at all. Unfortunately for this Kings offseason, putting aside the Cody Ceci contract, I think most of it is just fine. When this Kings team needed a great offseason, they needed something big, they needed a major move, and that unfortunately just hasn't happened. Now let's go back to the winning side of things here and go on to the Utah Mammoth, who I thought did very well for themselves. Now, I do think that the JJ Peterka trade has some decent value for the Buffalo Sabres, but in terms of the best player going back, it's pretty easily JJ Peterka. I'm still kind of interested to see how Peterka fits into that Utah team, considering how much of a rush offensive team they are already. He adds to the strengths, but maybe makes those weaknesses a little bit more glaring. We'll just have to see how it pans out. But as a talent, as a producer, Peterka has been fantastic over these last couple of seasons, and I think is easily worth what the Mammoth paid to actually get him. Michael Kesselring, solid player. Josh Doan, very solid player. But I think they have replacements for those guys in the system. Guys like Cole Baudouin, TJ Ginla for the forward side. For the defense, guys like Dmitry Simishev, Lamoureux, for example. So I don't think it's the end of the world there. In terms of the guys that got in free agency too, I really like the Brandon Tanev deal. He's just somebody I adore as a player, as a person. He's somebody that hasn't really aged too much. You know what you're getting. The energy, the enforcement on your bottom six. He's just always going to give you that intensity and that just in your face personality. And I think for a team like Utah that needed a bit more intensity in their bottom six, Tanev's going to check all the boxes for them. Plus Nate Schmidt, even though I'm not really sure about that contract, is a little bit iffy in terms of the term. Nate Schmidt was fantastic for Florida this last year, especially once the playoffs got going. So I think especially in the bottom pair role, he's going to do just fine in that on that aspect and bring exactly what Utah wants a bit more of. I would still like to see maybe another trade, perhaps maybe be a little bit more aggressive to add maybe to that middle six, but at the same time, they've already been pretty aggressive. And on top of a decent draft, Utah's right up here in the winners category. Now onto a team that I thought did very well for themselves. Let's go on to the Montreal Canadiens. And this was the exact type of offseason I wanted to see them have. Even though they still haven't filled that second line center position, honestly, I'd rather see the Habs be patient in that spot than force a massive contract to somebody that, quite frankly, might not have deserved it, like a Pia Suter, for example, or even a Sam Bennett if he were to be available, because I think the Habs could have given him a unfathomable amount of money. But I think they made the right decisions when they had the opportunities, which is exactly what the Noah Dobson trade is. Going after somebody that has his value at the lowest it's been over these last couple of seasons, but can give you some big time offense, even if there are a couple of defensive plays here and there where that might be a little bit iffy. But I think especially for the Montreal team, they have the defenseman around him to cover those issues up. Him with a Caden Gooley, for example, I think would be fantastic together. So I think for the Habs, it's going to work out okay in the end. And he's going to be a fantastic D for them also on top of that. You also got the Zach Bolduc trade, which I adored. I'm not the biggest fan of Logan Mailloux in terms of the projectability, some great shooting ability, and in terms of the pace, he's a pretty good skater offensively. But besides that, the D game is a work in progress, to say the least. And I think they simply just got the best player in this deal. In Zach Bolduc's case, he's really progressed over these last couple of seasons, and I could see the reasoning why St. Louis traded him. They traded a position that they didn't really need, especially Jimmy Snuggerud coming into the fold for a position they needed more of in a right shot defenseman. But for a team like Montreal, I think Bolduc's going to fit in well as more of a power play scorer. You see this last year, 19 goals and 36 points in 72 games. I think Bolduc kind of as maybe a line A replacement once he potentially gets dealt later on. I think is going to fit pretty well already. Be a fixture into that middle six, and maybe alongside like an Alex Newhook potentially as a centerman. I could see those two working out pretty well, if not a Kirby Dach if healthy. And again, Mailloux as the player you trade on that deal, I do that every single day of the week. Emil Heineman is maybe a decent loss. I liked him as a depth player, good shooting ability, good speed, but I think is more of a rawer project that Montreal didn't really need to take on. And of course, you have the 2 first-round picks and the Noah Dobson deal. But I think they still did really solid in the draft with the picks they did make after the first round. They didn't have any first-round picks, but I still think they were one of the bigger winners of that draft class in terms of pure value. So you get Noah Dobson on top of that, and that just makes it even better to me. You really complete that defense for the future. To me, it is rock solidified for the future now, and you can worry about the center position later. But all in all, with the big swings they made, I really enjoyed them. And I think especially in Dobson's case, he's going to be a pretty transformative D for that core for a long time. Okay, so editing Grav coming into this next segment is going to be talking about the Dallas Stars as one of the losers of the offseason. This was recorded before the Matt Dumba trade, though, so now if that official to the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Stars are officially cap compliant, so keep that in mind as you watch this next segment. Still don't like they had to give up a second round pick, even if it's in like 2050, to get rid of him. Makes that contract look even worse. Still, I think the Stars are not winning this offseason by any means, but it does look a little bit better getting Matt Dumba off the books, because him being on the team next year would have infuriated me. But without further ado, watch the rest of the segments and see my thoughts before the trade. Now, moving on to a loser of this offseason, to me, already not having a great offseason, I thought last year, and I think it kind of biting them in the butt in the playoffs. We go on to my favorite team in the Dallas Stars, and of course, I know the situation. The Stars don't have a ton of cap space. They headed into the offseason with virtually zero cap space, especially compared to a lot of other NHL teams. They did about the best they could, but the problem is they still need to make more moves for this team to even be cap compliant, and I don't even love the moves that they ended up making. Now, in the ESPN offseason site here, it's a bit misleading in terms of the key players added, because a lot of the Stars offseason this year was just bringing back the players that needed to be re-signed. Matt Duchene still at a solid AAV. Maverick Bourque also at a great AAV. So those two especially, I think, were the right moves to make. Jamie Benn also at a low AAV. Nothing really to complain about there. But my big problem is that there's just not really a change to the DNA of this team, especially when it comes to the defense, which I think is sorely needed. Of course, when you look at the key players lost, Cody, Ceci, that was an inevitability. Mason Marchment as a cap dump, that needed to happen. Mikael Granlund, the same thing. There was no chance they were going to be able to keep him. But there's no additions to the defense, and especially when you sign a player like Radek Faksa at the AV he's getting signed at, that makes the cap situation even more strict. But here's the thing, I'm talking right now on July 8th, which might date this video by a little bit, but I'm recording this right now, and we still have not seen a trade on the defense for either Ilya Bushkin or Matt Dumba, two guys that bring a cap hit that is just too much for their services. And even though it might cost a bit to get rid of those deals, I'm concerned that we haven't seen those trades yet. I think both players at this point have been a net negative for the Stars. Lyubushkin has been fine at points, but Dumba, I just don't think has been good at any point, and especially wasn't able to be played in the playoffs because he just wasn't good at any point either. So I think for the Stars team, I wanted to see them be a bit more aggressive defensively. I still want to see them add a top 4 right shot defenseman. I know it's a lot easier said than done. It's hard to acquire those type of players, but the Stars still have a decent prospect pool. They have a ton of picks to work with. I just wish there was something else, because year after year, I look at the right side of the defense and continue to draw blanks as to if this team will actually go all the way, because it is a serious weakness that really year after year has bit them in the back. So I don't know, even though it's not the end of the world and maybe there's something that could happen at the trade deadline, for example, I still come up disappointed by this Stars offseason, because I still think they need something more to be the top dog in the Western Conference, really solidify themselves, but that move has yet to be made. Now let's go into another winner here and go on to the New York Islanders, a team that I was impressed with this offseason for one simple fact, and that is they didn't try to contend this year when it was never going to be the reality. The Islanders saw what they needed to do. Darsh came in as GM, saw the future of this team, and saw where it was heading. Pure mediocrity. And what did they do? They changed things up. They traded a player, Noah Dobson, that didn't really seem like he wanted to be there, for 2 first-round picks. And I think the franchise is going to be much better for long-term compared to where they were before. Noah Dobson is a fantastic player, but I think the Islanders needed to go in a rebuilding direction, really to solidify themselves as a bottom-tier team next season, because these next couple of drafts have foundational players. And I think the Islanders, especially after getting that first overall pick, could really add and value from another one of those type of players. Of course, in the draft, I thought they did it spectacularly. One of, if not the best draft all together, not just with the first overall pick and taking who was ranked first overall, but the other selections they made. But make no mistake, Matthew Schaefer is a transformative player and will really change that defense for the better. But you also got Victor Eklund at 16th overall, Kashawn Aitchison number 17. I think all 3 of these players are going to be cornerstone pieces, especially Schaefer and Victor Eklund. So to me, the Islanders did exactly what they needed to do. They saw the reality and they decided to make a pivot. And considering how few teams out there are actually trying to rebuild, actually trying to tank, really the the Islanders' only big competition right now is the Pittsburgh Penguins in terms of trying to get worse. Even teams like San Jose and Chicago, they're trying to get at least a little bit better, though those teams might still be competition for that first overall pick. That's pretty much it. Everywhere around you, you have these teams in the middle of the pack, these rebuilding teams that are trying to get over the hump, yet the Islanders are going to strike, I think, while the iron's hot and get rewarded for it in the end. Now, going on to my final winner that I'll mention here today, I want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers, a team that I thought did exceptionally well, but they're another team here that I think a big reason for it was the moves they didn't end up making. They didn't go after any high-profile free agents. Really, the only one they went after was Christian Dvorak, and yes, it's a high AAV, it's a pretty funny deal, but it's just for 1 year, so it's not that consequential. Everything else, though, that I thought they did was pretty solid. You had the steal of the Trevor Zegras deal. In terms of the potential to give up like a second rounder for him is exceptional value for somebody that I think is already worth that, even at his lowest. But the skill set is radiant, and once he actually gets to a team that I think believes in him and actually can have a healthy season, I think Zegras is going to turn a lot of heads. Of course, in his first couple NHL seasons, back-to-back 60-plus point years. I know I've said that a lot throughout this channel, but it's still true. This is what this player is capable of, even at his youngest moments. So, to me, especially now entering his prime, although it is put up or shut up time in Philly, I think they'll give him the opportunity to succeed, and I think he absolutely will. And then you, of course, have their pretty brilliant 2025 NHL Draft class. They certainly had a type going for big players and physical attributes, but at the same time, I think they had a good mix of taking players that were bigger, but also have some skill to back it up. Porter Martone is a great example of that. In fact, I think he has more skill than has more of a power forward game, for example. He's somebody that I think is a really skillful forward, especially in transition and one-on-one situations. I want to see him unlock more of that power forward game, but in Philly, I have no doubts that he will. Jack Nesbitt wouldn't have taken him 12th overall, but I can still see the value as a bottom six centerman. The skating is a bit of an issue still for me, but I think he's very opportunistic in his game and has a good brain on him, which could take him quite a ways. You also got their second round picks. Carter Amico, big boy, solid skater. Jack Murtagh, good goal scoring, good around the net as a more of a feisty little guy. You got Shane Van Sacke, who I absolutely adore, maybe one of the most mature players of this draft class, but has such a good brain on him, knows exactly how to keep the game simple and effective, and I love that pick. But even guys like Matthew Gard, Max Westergaard, I mean, I think the Flyers got so much value throughout pretty much every single selection here. They did so extremely well. And even though maybe Jack Nesbitt would not have been who I would pick, I see the vision. I see what they're trying to do, and I see the identity they're trying to create. And hey, I love that type of vision. I love seeing that really permeate on a team, and it seems like we're going to start to see that with the Flyers. I mean, they have the skillful players too. Porter Martone is super skilled. Of course, Trevor Zegras, Matthew Michkov on the team already. So I think the Flyers are going to have a great blend of intensity and great skill on top of it. Now, going on to my last loser of the video, this is one that I'm just kind of confused by. I think they will still make another move, but we'll just have to wait and see, and that is the Minnesota Wild. Now, like the Stars, there could be another move in the works, and even like the Kings, who I mentioned. Again, I don't think there's many losers here that are very clear and evident, but in Minnesota's case, it just kind of feels like an incomplete offseason. If they are to only have made these moves, I would be very disappointed, considering they have $10 million plus in cap space. The only moves they made were bringing back Nico Sturm and taking on Vladimir Tarasenko's contract. And I like Sturm as a fourth line center. Tarasenko is fine at this stage, but not worth the money, and also isn't the Tarasenko he used to be. Now, Minnesota didn't really get rid of anything all that massive and let go of all too much, but they're another team kind of like LA that I want to see make major moves, get some unbelievable support behind Kirill Kaprizov, behind Brock Faber, and Z Boom on that defense if you can. I mean, I think now is the time to be aggressive if you're the Wild, but just like classic Minnesota, that is yet to happen here. I'm somewhat confident we'll see a move. Hopefully it's not Marco Rossi, but I have a feeling it might be. I just want Minnesota to do something, man, because I think in their current state, they're solid, they're good enough to make the playoffs, but not much more than that, which is really the Minnesota Wild's entire franchise's MO. I want to see the Wild break out of that, though, become something different, become something more exciting, and the offseason is a great way to do that. We just haven't seen any moves to inspire much confidence. But those are some of my winners and losers so far in the NHL offseason, and I must stress so far, because there there are some moves still to be made. We'll have to wait and see what happens, and I might do a new grade video once we get all the moves confirmed. But thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Comment down below your thoughts on my winners and losers, what you guys agreed and disagreed with, and out of all these teams, who do you think is the biggest winner and the biggest loser out there? And of course, share the video of all the hockey fans you guys know online, and click on this card for all my hockey rankings content in one playlist. I will see you guys in the next one, though. Have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.